The opinions and views shared in this podcast are the opinions and views of the host and the host alone. They are not a reflection of his employer or any other organization that the host is a member of. The host does not speak for anyone, only himself.
This is the I Am Pitts podcast. Get ready for contact. Yeah, get some.
Any available unit. Copy on a shooting.
Oscar 37 en route.
What's going on, everybody? This is your boy Dex with the I Am Pitts podcast, and we're back for another episode. It's been a long time since I've done an interview, so we got an interview getting ready to come up with a very special guest, kind of controversial, some people might say. Me, I'm not looking for controversy. I'm just here to look for the truth and hear what his side of the story is. But before we do that, it's been a while. I'm going to go ahead and apologize. I am not feeling that great. I don't know what's going on. Woke up feeling horrible. It's the Kentuckiana weather down here, man. Sinuses is all jacked up. So my head's hurting a little bit, but I'm still here because I know y'all want that good content, and I'm going to give it to y'all. But before we go further, let me go ahead and give a shout out to Gunfighter Trading Company. You all have heard me mention them on the show before. Gunfightertradingcompany.co. This is the NCO candle that I'm burning right now. Like I said, these guys are still doing their things and have a ton of deals going on, all types of merchandise. Get your little manly candles right here like I got, man. These things are phenomenal and they make a great gift. So I'm still rocking with Gunfighter Trading Company, man. So please make sure you go gunfightertradingcompany.co and go get you some merch and get you some cool candles and all that good stuff, man. They were actually in town about a month or two, actually 2 months ago. They were in town for the Christmas show, and I actually met them in person. They hooked me up with the cool little hoodie and all this stuff, man. So, man, big shout out to those guys, man. Like I said, go show them some love and some support. If there's anything I support veteran-owned companies and law enforcement. And so these guys are both of those. Go show them some love and give them some support, okay? So with that said, you all know one of the main reasons that I told you that I started the I Am Pitts podcast is because I love talking to people. I love guests. I love authors. I love officers and soldiers who, like me, took the time to write their story to share with others, because I believe that it is so important that we not die with the stories that we have lived and die with the stories that are our lives, but that we share those with other people so that they can learn from our lives. And, writing a book is one of the hardest things a person can do. So for anybody that writes a book and wants to come on my show, I want them on the show so that we can promote their book and promote their story, but also get their story from their own lips. Because we know in the day of media, there's so many people out here that are willing to tell your story for you, but they're not going to tell the whole story. Kind of like when I tell people why I wrote my book. When I die, there will be no question in my kids or my family's mind who I was, because they have my story that I wrote. Nobody else wrote, that I wrote. So they'll have my story. So with that said, I have getting ready to come on, a former LMPD officer, Cory Evans, who I actually used to work with on LMPD many years ago. I served with him in the 1st Division a little bit, and also on the LMPD SRT team, the riot control. So I've known Cory for a little while. I don't know deep Cory, like never hung out with him outside of work, but I've talked to Cory enough. So Cory to me has always been a straight up dude. He's a freaking warrior and he's a patriot. That's what I can tell you. But what happened with Cory is he ended up going to prison for a couple of years for an incident that happened during the Breonna Taylor riots. And there was this narrative being put out by the news that he did this thing. And my thing has always been, well, and I ain't gonna lie, at one point in time, I was swayed by the news, like, man, maybe he deserved to go to jail. But then once I was talking to Cory, and I was like, yeah, that doesn't make sense. Like, how come they haven't released the video? That's when I started to question things. And that's when I said, you know what? Who better to hear from than the man himself, who has had to go through this ordeal, than Cory Evans. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the I Am Pitts podcast. Cory Evans. What's up, man?
Hey, man, what's going on?
Not much, bro. Not much,
hanging
bro.
out with just
What's
hanging out
that?
with my boys and my dog today. Hanging out with the kids and the dog today.
Oh, man.
So,
Well, welcome to the show, man. Hey, I appreciate you taking time out of your day to come on the show, brother. Hey, it really means a lot to me, man.
yeah, for sure, man. That's just, I started a new job on Monday and just trying to keep life moving along. It's been a journey, that's for sure.
Hey, I ain't never met a cop felon before.
Yeah, there's not too many of us out there, but yeah, man, it's. I didn't think that being a felon would affect my life as much as it has, but man, it is uh, way more difficult to get by as a felon than I thought it was going to be. That's for sure.
Absolutely, man.
Employers are really scared, and the thing about it is I don't think that places that hire felons generally look at guys like me as the felon type, and when they see that I used to be a cop, that's when I start to run into issues because places that hire felons don't want former cops working with their felons
Mm,
because it creates a conflict. So I've had a really hard time finding a good job.
man, that's rough, brother. That is rough, man. But before we get to that, we're gonna start at the beginning with, bro, where? Because I know you're from Kentucky, correct?
Yeah, yeah, that's where I originated from. Yeah.
Where at?
So it's a real small town called West Liberty, Kentucky, in Morgan County. So
What
the
county?
towns are generally Morgan, Morgan.
Morgan County. Okay.
Yeah. What's up,
What
bub?
up?
That's my youngest one. He's wanting a drink.
Hey, family first, man. That's always what's important.
Yeah.
Daddy, hey, you might be unemployed, but when you're a
Yeah.
father, you're never unemployed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I got them outside playing right now. They're coming up with little games and stuff to play, so they're coming in every few minutes asking me to help with something. So
There you go.
just getting them drinks and things like that. But yeah,
Heck yeah.
but yeah. So West Liberty is where I originated from, and everybody there, you had just a couple of options growing up. You had the option of going to college and leaving the area for a job if you were smart enough. Um, but most of the local jobs were coal miner or coal mining adjacent type jobs, like you worked at a gas station or fuel station that supplied them guys. But there wasn't a whole lot of other teaching jobs. My mom was a teacher and my dad was a coal miner, and
Oh man.
that's really all there is in that area for like professional, well-paying jobs. So there was nothing growing up where I was at. Most of my uncles and stuff like that, they were like the handyman types. They would, build for people and things like that. But nothing. There's no real professional jobs out there. Like you're never going to meet, an attorney out there is going to be the prosecutor and like one defense attorney that like helps out with like 6 counties. Like there's just not that many
Jeez.
professional careers out there. Yeah, very.
So this
I think
is
it was,
Eastern Kentucky, right?
yeah, way deep out the sticks, like Pikeville, Paintsville,
Oh, okay.
Sayersville. Yeah, way out the sticks. Yeah. The closest Walmart to me growing up was 35 miles.
Jesus. 35 miles.
Yeah. Yeah. If
Ooh.
you wanted to go to Walmart, it was a pack up the kids, let's make a trip of it. It wasn't a, hey, I'm just going to run down the road real quick and grab something. Like it was, if we got a good snow, you better be stocked up on bread and milk. That's for real.
Yeah, that's where that comes from, that trope in Kentucky. When it snows in Kentucky, everybody runs to the store and get bread and milk and eggs.
Yeah. That's where it comes from,
Yeah.
man. Because like where I'm from, if it snows, you're done, and it doesn't take a lot of snow in Eastern Kentucky. Like a lot of these like people up in Michigan and stuff are like, oh, we get 3 feet of snow. It's like good for you, man. It's like down here the road's barely wide enough for a truck to get through, and if you just ain't getting a plow through them. So
And it's very
that's just
mountainous too.
yeah. Yeah, it's very rugged. People don't realize how rugged the Appalachian Mountains really are. There's certain areas of them that are, I mean, especially up in West Virginia, like Southern West Virginia, Eastern Virginia. It's very rugged in those areas.
Man, so you're from Morgan County now, and I know you were in the military. What led you to join the military? When did you join, and what branch?
So I joined when I was 17, when I was still in high school. So I was looking at options. I was a pretty smart kid, I was an AB student. But if you're not like acing everything, if you're not top of the class, you're not going to get scholarships. And being who I was in the era that I was growing up in, I wasn't going to get the scholarships to get through school. So I was like, I'll join the Army. And it was right when the Army was really pitching hard, like, hey, join up. This is 2005. So, like, hey, join up, fight in the war. We'll pay for your school, GI Bill. They're really promoting the whole be a warrior thing hard back then. So I was like, that's what I want to do. So I joined the
Did you play
Army.
sports at all?
Yeah, I ran track and cross country. Nothing like I played football for a handful of years, but I was a skinny kid. Like I was real skinny back then. I was when I graduated high school, I was 6'4" and 155 pounds.
Boy, you was a
So
beanpole, my
was like,
man.
yeah, I was a skeleton. Like I mean, there was no meat on me, so I couldn't really play the physical sports, back then because I was just so skinny, man. I was just so easily pushed around. So like football and stuff, I played wide receiver up until high school. But when I started getting drilled by a middle linebacker that is 5'10" and 220 pounds, I was just getting crushed. So
Yeah.
saved my bones. I left those sports and just ran track and cross country.
Makes sense. You was definitely built for running the distance, bro.
Yeah, I was built
Not
for
the
speed
gridiron.
back then. Yeah. So I did decent running track and cross country. I did I was always placed in regions and things like that, never won state or anything like that, but I was a decent runner. But that's funny because you think in the Army they're looking for guys that are like big, strong dudes, like the middle linebackers that would crush me, right? But when I joined the Army, I ran my first 2 mile in 10 minutes and 30 seconds. And that absolutely blew the drill sergeants' minds away. They're like, "Well, this kid is it. He's going to be a PT stud." Even though I could only do like 55 push-ups. They thought because I hate that now. Looking back, I'm like, I wish that the Army would get away from this. Like the guy's fast at a 2 mile run that makes him a PT stud, because it like we can get into this. It's a whole argument for me in the policing and soldiers, like PT standards are not what I think they should be. Like it really bothers me that being fast is what is good or shouldn't be. It should be more explosive based conditioning, I think. But
Yeah.
that's neat.
Bro, you can get away with anything in the Army if you're a PT stud. If you can run fast, bro, you could they could find you in like the town over with like 6 dead hookers in your room and a pile of cocaine, and they'll sweep it under the rug because you can run.
Push-ups and people just now.
He's a good soldier. Freezing up a little bit on me.
What happened there? Yeah. So what I was saying was like, but what I was saying was a lot of these guys in the Army that do like 100 push-ups, people expect that. People expect people to be strong like that, but when you can run fast, it just blows their mind for whatever reason. But I'm more impressed with the guy that can run like a 14 or 15 minute 2 mile and then throw 50 cal ammo cans all day long. That's what I'm more impressed with.
There you go. Combat effectiveness.
Yeah, I could care less. Yeah, exactly. And that's the problem I have with a lot of like these PT tests is they don't do a good job of like, because like I remember specifically when I was in Afghanistan, we were in a firefight and I was handing ammo cans. This is when I completely changed my mindset on PT and got completely away from the whole be a good runner. I can run all day long. I can go all day long. But I didn't have that upper body strength, that physical conditioning. So one ammo can of 50 cal weighs around 60 something pounds. So you have to hold it with one hand and hand it up to the gunner. If you can't do that over and over and over again, pressing that 60-pound ammo can up to the gunner, then you're no good. I don't care if you can run a 5 minute 2 mile. You got to be able to move those ammo cans or carry those mortar rounds and get them to the gunner sites or get them to the fighting positions. That's more important to me, because who cares if I can run a 10-minute 2 mile if
Exactly
I can't get ammo to the fighting positions to do the fighting.
Yeah, it makes sense, dude. So let me ask. So
sure, go ahead.
When you joined in 2005, did you join because the post 9/11 era? Were you like me? I guess, and a lot of guys from our generation, under the illusion that we were attacked and I got to go defend my country, or was it more so for you a selfish thing? Not saying that that's a bad thing, but I got to get the hell out of this county and get my life started.
It combination of both. Like I really wanted to go fight for the country, but I didn't want to stay in the county I was from. I knew the Army was my ticket out, but I also knew that it was going to be beneficial for me for the rest of my life. So it was a combination of both. Because my mom really wanted me to go to college, but I wasn't anti-college, but I knew that I wasn't the type to be cut out for college. I wasn't going to be uh, the type to sit down and write papers and study and do this and do that. And so I really wanted to get out there, get started in life, just hit the ground running, and the Army was my ticket to that.
Awesome, man.
So
So when you went and talked to, did you know what you wanted to do when you Army?
no, I had no clue, man. That's one of the reasons why I ended up with my first MOS, which was 89 Bravo. I was an ordnance tech. Um, so I did like it's like all the ASPs and all that where you get all your ammo from. That's where I originated at. Um, but I got really lucky. So I was part of a ordnance company, and that's all we did was ammo. I was there for like maybe a year or less, and the platoon sergeant that was in charge of me was like, "Hey man, you're super good at PT. You're really smart. This isn't where you need to be in the Army. You're not this. The Army can use you in more places." So he escorted me over to a special operations battalion and was like, "Hey, this is what you all need." They had an opening for an 89 Bravo, and I jumped into special operations and did that there for like 12 years, 13 years, something like that. That's really where I got the bulk of my tactical and technical training into the combat arms stuff.
Okay.
Uh, yeah. That's how
And I
I was
think,
like one of
yeah,
like just a handful of airborne 89 Bravos. Um, that's just not a common MOS for that sort of stuff. So I was
so
really lucky in how my career played out.
actually, yeah, that's pretty dope because I knew you were attached to special forces. So for the civilians that are listening to this podcast right now, so he worked with special forces. So be wary. There are people out there that work with special forces that will tell you that they were special forces and they didn't go through the pipeline. You chose not to,
Correct.
though, correct? Why is that? Because I mean,
Yeah. So
cause that's weird. Because like you would figure being in that environment, surrounded by these top tier one warriors, that you'd be like, shit, man, I'm gonna go ahead and go through the pipeline and you know
yeah.
go through all the special forces, the Q course and all that, man. And I figured you would,
Yeah.
but no, you some reason you didn't.
Yeah.
You just stayed where you were.
Uh, yeah. It's bad decisions making, man. So I was dating this girl,
Oh, there we go.
and she, yeah,
All good Army
I
stories
knew,
start.
yeah, I was dating this girl, but she was adamant that I not go special forces. She did not want me go to the actual 18 series schools. So I had trained really hard to go to selection. I had in my mind I was going to go to selection. I was going to get selected. A lot of the guys that I worked with that were tabbed up were like, "Hey man, you're going to make it. You're the guy. We want you to go." And I had trained to go, and then she was like adamant, crying, and, "Oh no, I don't want you to go. We're not going to spend any time together." And I was like, "All right, I won't go right now." And I just kept putting it off, kept putting it off, kept putting it off. Um, and then I did get to go to Ranger School as a reward for some stuff that I'd done. So that's one of the things about the Special Forces community is you don't get a whole lot of medals if you're not tabbed. They're not putting you in for any of the high speed awards. They'll give you coins and they'll give you schools and things like that if you want to do them, but they're not going to drop a bronze star with a B device on your chest. They're
Yeah.
just not going to do that. That's
I
reserved
want you,
for the tab guys.
I want people to catch what you said. You were rewarded with going to Ranger School. And see, it's a
Yes.
different mentality when people don't know what Ranger School is. That is the Army's premier leadership school, yo. So Ranger School is what 3 months of literally, part of my language, but an
Yeah.
ass whooping from day in and day out for 3 months in three different phases. And people
Yeah.
lose up to
63
like
days.
25, 40, 45 pounds in Ranger School. You're
Mhm.
starving, you're not sleeping, and it's continuous and never ending. And this is how Special Forces rewards you. And I tell people
Yeah.
it sounds weird, but I'm like, it's not in that world because that's what you want. You want that tab, that Ranger. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a Ranger, and
Yeah.
like you, passed it up for a woman. Biggest mistake in my
Hmm.
life, but
Yeah.
we learn as we go, man.
Yeah. And like after me and this chick broke up, I was like, now I'm going to go be special operations. Now I'm going to go do it. And then LMPD called and we're like, "Hey, we got a spot for you in the next academy, and I put it off again, and we'll see how that played out.
So when you join, did you join National Guard or did you go active?
I went active first, and I ended up in the National Guard after my first deployment. So after I deployed in 2008, at the end of my first contract, that's when I came to the National Guard side of the house. So a lot of people don't know this, but the Army National Guard has two groups of special forces. You have 19th group and 20th group. So there's
Okay.
National Guard special forces. Yeah, a lot of people don't know that, but and they deploy just as much. I deployed just as much as a National Guardsman as I ever did as active duty. So active duty special forces, they do a lot of rotations, but then National Guard, we do just as many rotations and J sets as active duty does. The only difference is I'm bouncing back and forth between a civilian employer and special operations. Because while I was in the police academy, my group came to me and they're like, "Hey, we need you to go to a J set in Bangladesh." So I was looking at going to Bangladesh for 6 weeks while in the academy. Luckily, I was able to dodge that deployment. But in 2018, I ended up going to Germany for a year. I did a year deployment to Germany in what's called SOC 4 to EE, Special Operations Command, forward of Eastern Europe. I was in Ukraine,
Remember that.
Moldova, Azerbaijan, the Baltic nations, and we were doing counter-Russian aggression. We were helping these Eastern Bloc nations prevent Russian aggression into their country and into their area. A lot of people, if you connect the dots from my perspective, Joe Biden gets elected, they pull funding for that mission. A year later, Putin invades. So, people can do their own thoughts on that. But in my opinion, Joe Biden caused the Russian invasion because he didn't want to put the money towards that SOC 40E mission.
And so let me ask, so before we get to LMPD, I know that you are heavy into martial arts. What's your specific martial arts that you do?
So I do pancration. I do a lot of teaching now, not much fighting, but
were you always into that?
No, I didn't get into that until I got onto LMPD. I always thought that I was a pretty tough dude being part of special operations and doing like the Army combatives and doing their little, hand-to-hand classes that they teach every once in a while. But you don't know how to fight with Army training. It's just when it comes to like fist fighting, hand-to-hand fighting, the Army does a really bad job of teaching guys that. Even in the special operations environment, they just don't teach you how to fight, and neither does the police academy. Like I thought
Very
I was,
generic.
I thought I was Billy Badass. And my first pancration class, I had a 145-pound redhead kid just whooped my ass, dude. I mean, he boxed my ears, and I was like, "What is going on?" I'm 6'4", and at the time I was like 215 pounds, so I was a fairly large person, and this like kid that I had almost 100 pounds on was just beating me up, and that really humbled me and showed me that I wasn't as tough as I thought I was. It's just wasn't.
Okay, so you got the martial arts background. So, but at what point did you think, while you were serving in your military career, man, I want to become a police officer? Was there because I know when I was thinking about it, I was looking at the federal level. I wanted nothing to do with local policing, but as you said, a woman, I ended up doing local policing, which I'm glad I did do because that's my love and my passion, man. So, what made you center on policing, and where all did you apply to?
So I really wanted to get into policing because I think it was after my deployment to I can't remember what country I was in, but I was dealing with like a local community there, and I saw some kids that were, "Hey boys, I'm talking, okay? You're gonna have to stop talking." Yeah, sorry about that.
Oh boy.
But I saw these kids. They were about my boys' age, about 6 and 8, and they were just they were so proud of these little chickens, and they were like showing me these chickens like we were out on foot patrol, and they're like, look at, and I was like, "Oh, that's awesome, little chickens, man!" And they were so proud of these like little mangy looking chickens, and I was like, "Man, where are these guys' parents? Where are these kids? Who's taking care of these kids?" And then I got to thinking, it's like I'm over here in another country worried about another country's kids when I could be at home worried about, kids in my own community. And that's, so I just got a soft spot for like kids and like, them growing up and making sure their environment's safe. And I really wanted to do that at a local level because being in the Army, I was taking care of the rest of the world, not taking care of my community. And that's kind of what put me on the path to be a police officer because I wanted to be more directly involved with my community. And I applied to state police. I applied to like Lexington, Georgetown, and a few others. But doing my research, I wanted to live in Louisville because I had been stationed at Fort Knox for a hot minute, just a few weeks prior to deployment. And I really liked Louisville. I thought it was the coolest city on the planet, man, because I've lived in Germany. I've lived in all over the United States, and I just really liked Louisville. Wanted to put roots there. So I applied to Louisville, I think 5 times before I finally got hired.
Really?
Yeah, I put in
5
my application.
times.
Yep, 5 times.
Even with the military background, it took you 5 times.
Yeah.
Good Lord, dude.
Yeah, I don't think they were looking for a guy with military background back then. I think they were looking for the college-educated young kid, 22, 23 years old. Because all of my class, I think I was like the second or third oldest in my class. And the oldest was that some like 55-year-old guy that had retired from like the ambassadors or something like that.
What year did you get hired by LMPD?
2014. Yeah, it was September. I think I got the call in August. Yeah, so I got hired in 2014, and I think I hit the streets in like May or something like that, May of 2015.
Yeah. Okay, so you hit the streets in May of 2015. What's it like for you finally getting to this point where, man, I want to be a police officer and I want to serve? And where were you? Where did you get assigned? As a matter of fact, too, what was that?
So
like
my first assignment was out in the 7th Division. What?
I also had the blue 699.
So for people that don't
Hey,
know,
Alex.
the 7th Division, that's in Louisville. That's kind of Louisville's south, what you call southeast, I guess.
Yeah, it's like East End light. Yeah. So you get some silly stuff out there. It's mostly domestic violence and things like that. But I remember wanting to be like, hit the ground running and like go get them. And because in the academy they preach hard about hitting the streets, going after them, and doing all that. And then they put me in the 7th Division, and I think there was like a week I went by with like 1 call for service, and none of those guys out there want to do anything proactive. Like it's like we're going to sit. I remember my PTO took me to a movie one time. We went to a movie and watched a movie on duty. Not even
That's
kidding.
the worst I've heard. I've heard of fishing. Yeah. I've heard of hunting. I've not heard of the movie.
Yeah. So we went to a movie theater out there, watched the movie. Hey, Ansel, go ahead and get your iPad, bud.
My man,
go get it.
Took him to a movie. Do you remember what movie it was?
Movie. Man, I don't remember. We went to church. We went to church every Sunday on duty. So we went to a movie. We went to church. Yeah, I'm not mad. I'm not hating. But, it's just the things that we were doing was not my idea of policing,
It's not what you
we'd go to the gym.
For.
Exactly. We went to the J-Mon shop. Like, we went shopping a lot. So it's just things like that where it's like, what in the world, man? It's like, what kind of... So, but that was the 7th Division, completely different culture from my next assignment, which was the 1st Division. Now, in the 1st Division, your career is made and break by what you accomplish. Like if you're not out there, what I ended up referring to it as hunting. And a lot of the guys I rode with, we called it hunting. We'd be like, hey man, we feel like hunting today. And it was just, we went for dope. We went for guns. We went for all the hot spots in the 1st Division. At the time, Beecher Terrace was still there. So we hit Beecher Terrace hard. We'd go down to Russell neighborhood. Yeah, it's gone now.
It's gone.
I don't know what.
No, they rebuilt it with these like nice, I guess, homes for like low income homes. Like it's weird. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it still a federal housing project, or is it like privately owned?
It's
Oh, it
I
is.
think it's
Oh,
I think it's still I think it's still federally owned or local, one of them. But dude, I tell people you
yeah,
can tear down the projects, but until you change the mentality of the people working there, it's gonna
yeah,
be the same problems. And guess what? It's the
yeah,
same problems, right? Ain't nothing changed. It's just a
yeah.
better looking environment. It's like
Yeah.
your
Well, it's
memorial
only
looks
going to
better
be better
sitting on the
looking for a
corner.
little.
That's all.
Yeah, it's only been better looking for a little while, man, because that mentality that comes with it, just they destroy everything around them. Like they don't take care of anything, they don't respect anything. Like go into any of the neighborhoods, like the bad neighborhoods in the West End, and they're covered in trash. There's litter
Trash.
everywhere, broken glass bottles. It's like if you don't take care of the place where you live, man, it demoralizes you, and I think that's a huge problem. It's a cultural problem. It's not got anything to do
Absolutely.
with like and Portland's the same way, Russell's the same way. All of
And
those poor
Portland's white.
neighborhoods.
And Portland's
Yeah,
white mostly. It's
yeah,
it's culture. It ain't got nothing to do with
yeah.
color. It is literally culture.
hmm a poor neighborhood is a poor neighborhood, and you can be in poverty because I grew up poor. But you can be in poverty. Like I explained this. I made a Facebook post a while back about this. There's a difference between being poor and being in poverty. If I'm in poverty, I'm looking for a way out. I'm looking for the next opportunity. But when you're poor, when you have that poor mentality, you're not just broke, but you don't care. You don't care about anything else. You don't care about nothing else. And that's why some of these poor neighborhoods are just covered in trash because they don't care. But you go into a place where it's poverty and it's still at least clean. The people might not be living that great, but at least clean or cleaner. But that's just something that was a culture shock, man. When I went into the Russell neighborhood and Portland, and just the way some of these people think and live, it's just crazy.
So I was going to ask you, you coming from the the sticks of Eastern Kentucky, coming to work in you know, the hood primarily. What was like your first initial thought? Like, hey, I grew up just like you all, but I'm not like y'all. Like, what was like really going through your mind policing out there and then being introduced to this whole new culture? Because that's one thing they've been trying to push in policing is, you go through the academy, they give you, you know, what Hispanic training to deal with the Mexican
Mhm.
culture. And somebody made a good point up, like, yeah, but then you take these young white kids that ain't never been around black people in the hood, and then you drop them in the middle and don't give them any training on the culture out that way, and then it
Mhm.
goes bad. Like, what was it really going through your mind initially when you first got there?
I think the army training had prepared me mentally. Yeah, I hadn't gotten any training specifically on black culture or the poor culture that I just talked about. I think being deployed overseas with Muslims and being deployed overseas where there's like severe poverty. I mean, like I'm talking like really poverty, like the mangy chickens, that type of stuff. um, and speaking with those types of people. And while I was in the army, I got an associate's in sociology, which is culture training, and I did that there specifically for my setup to be a police officer because I thought sociology would be better than a criminal justice degree because being able to speak to people is the biggest part of policing.
Absolutely.
So I think I was more prepared than the average bear when it comes to interacting with a culture that I've never interacted with, just because I've been exposed to a lot of different cultures in the military. Um, but it was still a shock because you're not ready for the type of violence that can come at you out of nowhere with some of these people. Because when I was in the military, uh, somebody bucks, they're done. They're dead. We're going to shoot you. But as a police officer, you got to de-escalate. And I know everybody
Mhm.
thinks that de-escalation training is like this new cool thing that policing
Bro, I'm
doesn't have,
so
but it's
tired. I'm so tired of hearing civilian. You need to de-escalate. That's one thing I
yeah,
hate when officer. You need to escalate. Like when somebody tells me to de-escalate, oh, you gonna piss
yeah,
me off, and I'm gonna escalate.
yeah. It's like
New
it's like
catchphrase.
I tell people all the time. Like I tell people all the time, you can't de-escalate somebody that does not want to be de-escalated. There has to be an opening to even start the de-escalation process. If I'm pissed off and I'm mad, you've got to let me burn that energy out before you can start de-escalating me. If you come at me, you're like, "Hey man, calm down." It's like telling a woman to calm down. Like you need to calm down. It's never going to go good for you. Um,
Nah, I never win.
so You can't calm somebody down or de-escalate somebody that's not ready to be de-escalated. It's not like a switch. I can't go up to somebody that is like carrying a gun and is like fighting mad and has already popped off rounds. Like, hey, sir, we need to talk. And then they're all of a sudden be like, okay, let's talk about this, and it's going to be the end of it. It takes hours, days sometimes to talk people down. I mean, it's just like the de-escalate stuff. It makes you so mad. But they want to say de-escalate when there is no chance of de-escalating, especially not at that point in time. It's a process, and it takes a long time to de-escalate somebody. And in a situation that can go sideways in a split second, there is no de-escalating.
A guy with a gun,
maybe
got a baby held at hostage, and the police shoot. Why didn't they de-escalate? Like, well, bro,
yeah,
kind of. That's why I say the general public has no clue or concept of de-escalation.
None.
It is a catchphrase they've heard on TV and in the media that they don't know what the hell they're talking about. That ain't how de-escalation works. Time and distance.
Well,
and sometimes you don't have time and you don't have distance, and you got to act.
It was funny. So whenever I was going through all my stuff, I was talking to a couple other guys in the first division, and we were talking about like how would you de-escalate each other and how would we try to get each other calmed down. And one of the guys looked at me specifically and said, I wouldn't even try to de-escalate you. I would just shoot you. And he straight up told me he would just shoot me because he knew that there would be, like, if I was at that level, there would be no talking me down and there was no fighting me. There was no wrestling me. That his options would be just shoot me because he knew there was nothing he could have done to have stopped me if I wanted to get sideways with him. And that was us talking about each other as friends. Like he said that if it ever came down to it, he could not arrest me. He would have to shoot me. So like,
Man.
yeah. And we were all just, hypothetical. Like, how would we do this? How would we do that? What do they call it? Mentally rehearsing, as they call it in like training. But like we were just talking about situations like that. Like, what would you do with a 6'4", 235-pound martial arts fighter? I would shoot him. I would not try to fight him, and I would not try to de-escalate him. Like, there's just no avoiding that conflict.
Yeah, it's like asking me how am I going to de-escalate Tim Kennedy while he's on top of me?
Mm-hmm.
Like, bro, I'm gonna de-escalate him with his 9mm round, bro.
Yeah,
there ain't no winning.
Exactly.
There ain't nothing you can do.
There's certain dudes that you cannot. It's just not going to happen.
That's unfortunate, man. So you're policing down there, man. How were you enjoying the job of being a police officer? Was it what you thought it was while you were doing it?
Yes, it was everything that I thought it was going to be, and then some. There was a lot of things that I got to do as a police officer that I never thought that I would do. A lot of situations. I thought it would be years before I had a lot of police stories, but I mean, like it was like 2 years, dude, and I could have written a book of everything that I'd seen. And 2 years later, I could have written another book. I mean, you see so much as a police officer, so much so fast that you don't even remember a lot of the like crazy things that you've done. And then like somebody's like, "Hey, you remember that time?" You're like, "Oh yeah, I remember that." Because there's just so much, man. It's constant. Like I know some police officers say, "I went my entire career without pulling my service weapon." It's like, well, then obviously you worked in Mayberry because I couldn't go a week without pulling mine in the West End.
Bro, they ain't work where we worked at. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Like what?
If you worked 20 years and never pulled your weapon, you're in Mayberry, man. Or you're Barney Fife and you had one round in your pocket because, man, it was the Wild West. It was the West where we worked at.
So, around the time you got on, that was around the time that World Star Hip Hop started coming around and people, phones were getting bigger around that time. People recording everything. And I remember the first time, I can't remember. I think I was in DAP or somewhere, but I remember seeing a video of you going viral. And you had this dude out of the car. You was whooping his ass. So what was so we're gonna get to that situation, but like I want you to explain that situation and what was it like for you seeing this video go viral?
Oh man. It went so viral so fast. All right. So I got this guy out of the car, things happen, and he ends up getting beat up. So I'm taking him to the hospital where he's in the back of the ambulance. I'm following the ambulance down. By the time I get from 27th and Broadway to U of L Hospital, the chief had called me and said, "Get your camera, docked and recorded and go home. It happened that fast. So I was like, well, what's going on? He's like, I have people calling my office. So Sergeant Abersold at the time, I think he's like a lieutenant now, but Sergeant Abersold, as soon as I got off the phone with him, he calls me. He's like, hey, you got to come back to the desk right now. We got to do this air. It's going viral big time. It's all over the place. I was like, okay. So I get back, got my camera, and it had hit Facebook, Instagram. It was on. I mean, it was everywhere, dude. I had people texting me, like sending me copies of the video, like, "Hey, did you see this?" Yes, I've seen it. I was there actually. You know,
It's like, that's me.
yeah, I was actually remember that. But yeah, dude, it went viral fast. And the thing that really blew my mind is that the department would not get out in front of it. It was going viral. They would not release the body cam footage. They would not talk about it. They kept using the excuse like, "Oh, it's a pending personnel matter." It's like, so you're going to put a shooting out there where people die like within hours of it happening. But this right here, where it's like you could have like completely solved this issue by showing this dude jumping me and crushed the entire narrative that I like drug him out of the car and all this nonsense. But they would not do it. So the narrative started because some girl, I think the original video, I can't remember her name, but she recorded it as I drug him away from the car. So it looked like I pulled him out of the car. And her story was he refused my search, so I threw a soda into his face and drug him out of the car and just started beating him up. And that was what was posted online, and that's what made it catch fire. It went everywhere. But the truth of the matter is I pulled the guy over, and he was doing all the classic signs of "I've got dope on me. Please don't ask me any questions." So of course I started asking questions. I was like, "Hey man, you got anything on you're not supposed to have?" Man, why are you picking on me? It's because I'm black. And I was like, "Bro, I pulled you over because your window is like a limousine tent." I was like, I couldn't even tell who you were.
I don't know who you are, my man.
Yeah, like that was always the biggest pet peeve of mine. If I pull somebody over and like, "Hey sir, I stopped you for your window tint," because I explicitly told him I stopped him for his window tint. You pulled me over because I'm black. I literally just told you I could not see you because of your window tint, and now you're pulling the race car. It's like, all right, dude, whatever. So I waited for my backup to get there, and I started running his information. It was a pain, but I got his information from him, ran him, and of course, ticks, just all these charges for like trafficking in controlled substances. And I was like, all right, this dude is definitely up to no good. He's got all these previous charges. He's got pending charges. He's got like circuit court pending for dope cases. I was like, all right, he's definitely got dope on him. So I had my one partner go to one side, and I pulled him out of the car. I was like, hey man, and I even quoted Pennsylvania v. Minston. I told him explicitly, I was like, hey man, you gotta get exit the car. Why do I gotta get out of the car? And I told him the case law why he's gotta get out. And I was like, do not make me pull you out of the car. So he gets out on his own accord, and he sits on the bumper of the car. And I have my partner at the time and his PO kind of like stand and watch. And I say, hey man, can we get permission to search? He says, call your dog. And I was like, okay, I'll call my dog. So I called the canine, and I went back to write my citation for the window tint, no seat belt, expired tags, suspended driver's license, the whole nine. So I started writing the citation. And about the time I started writing the citation, he knew the jig was up. He knew that the dog was going to come, so he was going to play his odds. Hey, man, you can go ahead and search it, but get me out of here faster. All right, cool. So the first thing that I noticed on his pants, now this is where the intuition of being a police officer really plays into things, because I think if you don't have that good intuition, most people would have missed this. But I noticed he had moisture on his pants. It looked like he'd spilled something. Well, there was a soda in the center console, a can of Pepsi, that had just been opened. You know, like if you just open a can, it fizzes much louder than if it's been open for a while. So like, you just opened this. So I started pouring it out. As I poured it out, the little dope came out. I was like, there it is. I was like, put him in handcuffs. As soon as I said put him in handcuffs, the dude attacks me. Like tries to like bulldog me over and get back in the car. Well, that does not work out well for him, because at the time of this event, I had been training for like my 6th MMA fight. And I was in fight camp I was cut down to 185 pounds for this fight in particular. So he thought like, oh, this is a tall, skinny dude. I'm just going to bulldog him over, get my car, I'm going to be gone. He was wrong. He got caught with an underhook, so I underhooked him, and then I did what's called a gooseneck, and I just fed him like 3 uppercuts. He fell over. His hands go straight to his waistband. As soon as I get on top of him, his hands go to his waistband, and I did like I think 3 or 4 like really hard kidney shots. I mean, I gave this guy everything I had on his kidneys.
And for people that don't know, people typically carry their firearms in their waistband. We are, as officers, are trained on that. So when you see somebody reaching for their waistband, the first thing coming to your mind as an officer is, oh, he's got a gun. He's about to try to shoot me and kill me. So that's for the civilians.
Gun, knife. Yeah, guns, knife. Some people might carry guns in, their ankles or their, shoulder holsters or whatever, but nobody does that if they're on the street. Yeah, it's very rare. So he starts digging in his waistband. It turns out he's not armed. I don't know why he's doing that. And my guess is he just thought, I'm going to stick my arms underneath him and they're not going to arrest me. I don't know. He wasn't armed, though. But I fed him like 3 or 4 really hard kidney shots. His arms shoot out from underneath him, and I get him handcuffed. And as soon as I get him handcuffed, he starts this like, oh, call my mama nonsense. This crowd forms of like 50 people out of nowhere, man. They're all like hooting and hollering at me. I'm like, oh, shit. So I like put him in a cradle position, and I let the PO try to guard him. Like, hey, stay with him. Don't let him do anything. He like lunges back at the dope and is like licking, like trying to eat the dope out the ground. He's like on the asphalt. He's like, oh. And I was like, gee, get him away from the dope. So like I pull him away from the dope, and then like when I drag him by his ankles, his pants come down, and people are like, oh, he's stripping his pants off that man. And I was like, it's not like I'm trying to strip this dude naked in front of God and everybody. It's just happening. But he keeps doing this. Like he lunges at the dope like 2 or 3 times trying to eat it and get rid of it. So finally we lock him up in the back of the squad car. And, by this time there's like 5 or 6 other officers showing up. We've got a whole crowd control situation going on. Sergeant Abersold shows up. I give him the lowdown, like, hey, this is what happened. I'm like, do you want ambulance to come? They're like, yeah. So then we transport him to the hospital. And like I said, by the time we got from 27 and Broadway at the Kroger to U of L Hospital, it had hit the internet hard. And I was getting calls from the chief.
Man. So what was your punishment? Did you get punished for that, correct?
No, I did not. I fought it tooth and nail. Like I was not giving PSU or PIU anything to hang me on, man. Because I have always followed the law, case law, policy to the letter. Like I was that guy. Like if there's a gray area, I'm going to be able to articulate myself very, very well. But I was really good at knowing the law when I pulled somebody over. Like when it came to window tint, like there's a certain percentage it's got to be. There's what's called the AS1 line that's on the windshields that say if you have tint that goes below that AS1 line, which is 5 inches from the roof line, that's illegal. So I knew all of that. Like I had my ducks in a row, man. And as hard as they tried to get me, like I just would not give them an inch to hang me on. And I was able to get out of that entire thing without a single sustained complaint. But they had hit me up on courtesy because I dropped the F-bomb on the guy. But, the way I articulated that, they're like, you're being discourteous to this man. And I'm like, this guy just attacked me. And I want him to understand in no uncertain terms what's going to happen to him if he does not comply with my commands. And harsh language is the easiest way to convey those types of commands. And that got me out of it. Everything, the excessive use of force, language, all of it was completely exonerating. So I got out of there with 0 punishment. Now, I was placed, I didn't go home for the rest of the day that day, but I don't consider that a punishment. But yeah,
after that though, like I think you kind of started developing kind of a negative reputation from what I remember after that, correct?
Yeah, so there was I think it was mostly officers that didn't work with me that saw me on a regular basis hit social media because I was busy getting the things that a lot of these other officers couldn't get. You know, if you work out in the East End and you see me down here just like kicking ass and taking names day in and day out, you're like, man, he's up to no good. He's excessive. And it's like, you just don't work with the type of people that I worked with. You can't be in the West End as an active officer and not get into some messes. It's just not possible.
Yeah,
I don't
it's
care
gonna happen.
I don't care how good you are with the gift of gab. Like you got all these people, man, you just don't know how to talk to people. It's like, dude, I know how to talk to anybody. I can hit it off with anybody. There's like, if you go back and look, I mean, I made 750 something arrests in my 8 years, and I had 27 uses of force. So for somebody to say that I was always beating people up and this and that, 27 uses of force, 750 something arrests in 8 years. So for people to say that there, especially since I'm making my supervisor at the time, when I finally left LMPD, only had like 13 or 14 felony arrests. I had over 300. And he had 10 years on. So I'm at like 7 years at the time with over 300 felony arrests, and he's got 10 years on, and he's only got like 3% of what I've got. So for him to sit there and say I'm too aggressive, I'm not too aggressive. You're just lazy. Because I guarantee you, if you were doing the type of work that I was doing, if you did the volume that I was doing, you would be producing paperwork too. That's just the nature of the beast. The harder you work as a police officer, the more negative light you're going to see. So I think a lot of the officers that have negative opinions of me just didn't do work like I did. And I'm not saying that they're bad cops, they're probably good cops, but they just don't do the volume of work that I do. Every day
Do you
when I
think
came
that
to
was the
work,
officers you worked with directly?
no, there's no officer that I worked with, and I am still really good friends with all my beat partners. Beat 2, Russell Neighborhood, I am really good buddies with everybody still except one. And he's more concerned about his career than he is, you know, being loyal to a friend, which I don't fault him for. You just got to take care of him and his. But nobody that I worked with ever thought that I was excessive. Nobody that I worked with ever thought that I was abusive. You know, and one of them is a police officer in another department, and another one is a major crimes detective. And another one is one of the SWAT CEOs. So everybody I worked with is gone places in LMPD. But the thing is I kind of led that crew, and I'm not saying that like I was the like de facto beat daddy. It's kind of like, you know, I was referred to as the beat daddy all the time. So like I kind of made the calls of when and where we were going to go, how we were going to do it, things like that. And we all had phenomenal careers. I mean, we were all knocking it out of the park. And I'm sure you know a few of them. I guarantee you know every one of them. So yeah,
Worked with them all like that. That's what I can say. I was like, I know Cory, but I never worked the streets with you directly. I've been on some runs with you here and there, but never directly. I do know that I worked with you directly on SRT, which is the LMPD riot control team. So I'm going to kind of switch there. That's where I've had most of my interactions with you. And that's kind of where I remember hearing about Cory Evans' demeanor of he's not a good officer. And then this whole thing of he's racist started coming up because of this one incident. And so I want to I kind of want to paint the picture for everybody where this is when around 2015 is when things started to swing in this country politically after the Mike Brown death and the Freddie Gray death, when people started to not view police officers as the good guys anymore. And with that, after that, we start going into the whole Breonna Taylor thing and George Floyd thing, which really compacted things along with the elections and along with COVID. People were losing their minds. But a lot of people don't know that at that point in time on the police department, there was also a strife and racial divide happening with officers on LMPD. And I was kind of directly involved in that, where I was like, I'm not choosing black or white. I'm just choosing, hey, we're the police. Let's do that, yo. And so I remember being very uncomfortable in a lot of situations where the black officers would go off of one end and people look at me like, you coming with us? And I'm like, bro, I'm just staying. I'm cool with who I'm cool with, bro. So, you know, and then so I remember we were working this. It was we had an SRT call out downtown, yo, and I was kind of on, I guess, Overwatch, you could say, yo, and I was calling off, and I see all these Hispanic, these trucks and all these Mexican flags, because at this point in time in Louisville, we're having protests daily. There's caravans with Black Lives Matter, Antifa, and all these crazy weird groups in Louisville protesting, And so I'm like, hey, radio, just be advised, I got a group of trucks with Mexican flags just cruising down Broadway. And I don't know what's going on, and we're trying to figure out what's going on. And I remember I put in a group chat and I put, hey, I don't know what's going on, but there's people out here with these Mexican flags. They're everywhere. And somebody said, hey, it's Mexico's National Independence Day. And then I remember the next text that came after that. And it was Cory in the group chat with no fear said, how come they celebrating it here, not in Mexico? And I tell people, like, I have no filter, but I'm also, I have zero filter, but I'm a tap person. I call it time, audience, and place. And I saw that. I was like, no, Cory, no. Just because I knew the current environment we were in, with what was going on with the team and the racial divide that was kind of splitting with the city and the department, and I was like, no. And then I just saw it coming, man. I was like, oh God. And then the people started saying, Cory's racist. And I'm like, I know Cory. Cory's not racist. Cory's a patriot. And the funny thing is, that was about 4 years ago, Cory. If you look at what's going on at the border now, people are now saying, why? What you said was true. Like, why are they celebrating here in Mexico? And the thing is, everybody's looking at the invasion we got at the border now, like, oh, well, why are all these people coming here? Now we got all these issues that are spreading, and people are starting to hate people here illegally now. So it's kind of, it's took 4 years to cook, but here it is, man. And so that's kind of what, and then you got kicked off the team after that, man. So what was your thinking during that timing when you said that?
Man, it's just like, so my process is, if you want to come here because you want to escape the shithole you're from, don't bring those problems with you. Come here and be an American. Assimilate. Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't care if you're Nicaraguan, you're Guatemalan, Mexican, you're Nigerian. I don't care where you come from. But when you get here, you're not that anymore. You're not a Nigerian. You're not a Mexican. You're not a Nicaraguan. You are an American now. And you need to behave like an American. You need to have pride in the country. You need to have pride in the flag, and support our way of life. And if you can't, you're going to have the same exact problems that you came from. You cannot bring your baggage with you and expect things to change. Because the only thing you're going to do is turn the community that you moved to into what you left. Because if you bring those same values, you bring those same voting ideas, if you do all that, you're going to have the same problems. It's the same, and it's the exact same problem that Texas is having right now with people in Florida, people fleeing California. You got all these people fleeing those states. Those states suck now because they've had a bunch of bad cultural decisions. They're like, oh, this is awful, we're leaving. But they're bringing those problems with them to those states. And it's the same thing around the world. You cannot leave somewhere. Like, when I left Appalachia, when I left Eastern Kentucky, I did not bring all the BS that I grew up with to Louisville. I have a backyard. I don't have 25 chickens in my backyard ruining my backyard. I have a nice backyard. I don't have vehicles.
Broke down vehicles.
So those are the things that I grew up around. I did not bring that mindset with me when I moved to Louisville. When I moved to Louisville, I wanted to be a Louisvillian. I wanted to be the suburban guy. I wanted to be the suburban dad. That's what I wanted, and I assimilated that. I did not bring my Appalachian roots with me. Now, do I still celebrate my Appalachian heritage? Sure. I still go to the Sorghum Festival, which is the festival back home, every year. I still celebrate a lot of the things that I grew up around, but I don't have that culture anymore. I left that culture behind for a better culture, in my opinion. But a lot of these people want to move here, have the benefits of a superior culture, but live the way they did with their inferior culture.
What do you say to people when they say that's racist, Cory?
Well, they can get effed, because I'm not changing what I say. I'm not changing the way I feel with my opinions because somebody else is hard on me. Now, if I was racist, I would say, get those out of here, or get those people out. They don't need to be here. That's racist. saying that you need to assimilate, which really blows my mind. So now that I'm no longer fighting. So catch this. I no longer fight, right? Part of my probation is I'm not allowed to be an active fighter. But I coach. Both of my active MMA fighters are both black. Both of them. And these dudes are like my kids. They're both like 22, 23 years old. I'm teaching these dudes how to fight. I'm teaching these dudes how to live with discipline. I'm keeping them out of the west end of Louisville. I will not let them go to Louisville. Both of my fighters are in Indiana. They're like, hey, coach, can I go to Louisville? I'm like, absolutely not. You are not allowed to go into Louisville. If I catch you in Louisville, I will drop you from the team. And that's because I do not want them involved in that culture. I want to raise them as fighters the way I was raised as a fighter, with discipline, with respect. But when it comes time to kick ass, you do it, and you have no mercy when you do it. But I'm not going to let these guys ruin their lives by getting involved in a shit culture in the West End of Louisville. I'm not going to do it. So,
and see, people will hear that and be offended, yo, but because they'll hear that and they'll think that you are saying that everybody in the West End is shit, and we know that's not the case. But the problem is you have a small segment of that population that runs amok in the entire place. We know that 98% of people are good people. But that small 2% ruins it for everybody, and it casts the entire area as that, man. And I know you agree to that.
Yeah,
but unfortunately, that pool for the dudes, it pulls them in.
Yeah, and they are of that age to where they are the most acceptable to that lifestyle and to that culture. Because the one guy that I train, he is 23. He just got out of prison. He's trying to change his life, and it would be really easy because he's unemployed. I'm trying to get him into the fight game. I'm trying to get him his pro card. I want to see this kid succeed. But if he goes over there and somebody throws him a stack of $100 bills and says, hey, man, I made this here in a weekend, it's going to be really easy for him to get sucked down that rabbit hole. And all it would take is for a guy like me that still hunts hot and heavy to find him and put him right back in prison because he's already a felon. He's young and he's capable of violence. So it wouldn't be anything for him to get caught up in that lifestyle. And that's what I want to avoid. I want to take his combative energy, his ability to fight, and I think that he's got potential to go to the UFC, man. He's a really great kid.
Nice.
He's a hard worker, but at the same time, he is easily influenced, and all it would take is a few bad days down there for him to get wrapped up in something he should be wrapped up in, and he can ruin his life. And that's what I want to avoid.
Doing the Lord's work, man.
I don't think that I'm doing the Lord's work. I'm just doing the right thing. I'm no longer a cop, so I can't do it in one way, so I'm going to do it in another way. So it's just I like fighting and I like teaching and I like coaching, and this guy's got a lot of potential and I can make life better for him. So why would I not do that? And people could call me racist if they want to, but there's two young black guys that I'm dedicating almost as much time as I do to my own boys. I teach my own boys pancration and karate as well. But to me, there's potential for these guys to go far. They've just got to have the right guiding hand, and they're not going to find that in the West End of Louisville.
So we're gonna fast forward a little bit because time's running short. But I'm good to keep this going as long as you are, man, because I'm really enjoying this. I'm really digging this, bro. So, man, so before that whole incident with the caravan, I had just gotten back to Louisville after my time with the border, my failed adventure down on the border. So I remember I think it was my first day in the first division, and I remember walking in. I'm like, "Yo, what's up, Cory?" And I see you, and then I remember seeing our lieutenant walk over to the table, and he served you papers. And I'm like, and I just seen your face kind of go like, oh shit, like what happened, bro?
Yeah.
And you got served papers for this incident that happened during the riots in 2020. And so we all, like I said, we all know this is at the time when things in this country had changed and policing, the P in police stood for politics. The job completely taken over by politics at this point in time with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. Nobody was thinking straight, yo. So I started asking around, and they were like, man, Cory beat up some innocent protester during 2020. And so I've just been paying, and that, like I said, I didn't know the facts because I wasn't in Louisville at the time, so I didn't know what was going on during the first few weeks of the riot. So all I hear is, well, you know, Cory, he's aggressive and he's a fighter. He loves coming out here and beating up poor black people, and this just Cory likes to beat up on people for no reason because he can, yo. And I was just like, that's not the Cory I know. Cory's a warrior, and if you try to fight Cory, Cory's gonna make you pay for it, yo. So for me, I was listening to all this, and I'm like, man, I gotta hear Cory's side and gotta get the trial. But unfortunately, at that point in time, you were kind of exiled from the first division, and you were sent home on a leave. So, and I hadn't seen you since then, man. So, take us into what happened during that point in time during 2020 during the riots, so where this incident occurred. And we'll go from there, man. I want to know what happened from your perspective. And so for people that don't know, they're saying that he beat up a protester with his stick. The way they explained it to me was like, you just came in and just like swaylaid this dude, like tomahawked this dude and just cut him in half. That's what they're saying.
Yeah,
but like I said, people, this is my problem. If we know this is 2024, if the police or the feds have video of you doing this, which apparently they do, why? And my thing is, why have they not released the tape? Because I want to see the video footage myself so I can judge. but that's the problem. We don't have that.
So, yep, they sealed it. And I can tell you, so going back to the very beginning, I think this all happened day 3 of the riots. So by the 3rd day, we had been working, because I was like one of the initial responders. We'd been there for like, in the 3 days that it had been going on, we were there for like 48 hours. I mean, we had been there for I had almost no sleep. We'd worked like 4 o'clock in the morning every day, like 6 hours of sleep a night. They just been, marching all over the city. But we had Molotov cocktails thrown at us. We'd been shot at. We'd had guns pointed at us. We'd had fireworks thrown at us. They had thrown pipe bombs. I know the news like to reported it as fireworks. There were fireworks thrown, but somebody had been throwing legitimate pipe bombs at us. So there was a lot of officers that were getting hurt. There was one of my best friends had been set on fire by the group that this alleged innocent protester was involved with. So this group we'd been tracking for hours at this time. They had broken into a CVS and had stolen every single pharmaceutical out of the CVS. All the food was stolen. This CVS had been cleaned out. And I remember specifically there was a woman that was outside of the CVS crying, begging the the rioters to stop stealing the drugs because her baby needed a life-saving medication from that particular CVS because she couldn't get to another one. And these Black Lives Matter protesters told this single black mother, "We're doing this for you," while she was begging them not to do it. So that just shows you. Yeah, and both of these protesters, both these rioters were both white, telling this black mother that we're doing this for you.
Implants, you're really hoping they weren't from here. They weren't from the city.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No. So we tracked them from there on down, and then they had broken into another place, and they were trying to set a Firestone Tire Center on fire. They were throwing Molotovs at this place and trying to set this place on fire. So we encircled them, and then we collapsed the circle in on them, and we were given the command, go get them. So the entire SRT team breaks out into a sprint, and we're chasing these dudes down. Hold on a second, bud. And then this kid that's running sees me running behind him. And now, mind you, I'm in full turtle gear, so I look like an absolute giant. And he sees me running. He tries to drop to his knees before I tackle him. So as he's dropping to his knees, I come flying across the screen and do like a full-on like NFL style Madden blitz, man. Just boom, just drilling. He gets a cut on his head that's about 2 centimeters long, is what the medical report said. Big enough for 1 stitch. So it's big enough for 1 stitch, and I'm like, all right, no big deal. He's got a little blood trickling down the side of his head. We handcuff him. He goes to the hospital and then goes to jail. Gets out the very next morning. Well, he goes and files a complaint and says that somebody hit him with a baton. The feds pick this up and they run with it. They come after me with everything they've got. They watch hours and hours and hours of body cam footage. I'm pretty sure they watched every single person's body cam footage on the entire SRT team. They looked at every single security camera in the area.
they can't find a single clip of me hitting this guy in the head with a baton. Only thing they have is my body streaking across somebody's body cam footage from another angle. And because I had my baton in my hand, they claimed that I hit him as I tackled him. And I'm like, even if I did hit him while I was tackling, I did not intentionally strike this man in the head with a baton. I'm 6'4", and at the time I was at my biggest I'd ever been. I was 6'4", 230 pounds, professional MMA fighter. And you want to say that I hit this kid in the head with a 36-inch hickory stick and didn't scatter his brains across the asphalt? That he just got a 2-centimeter cut with no skull fracture, no nothing, no concussion, and he walked away from that there, still conscious, like he never lost consciousness. So they knew they had no case with what they had. So they compelled me or coerced me into a plea deal. They're like, if you don't plead to this and take the time that we're offering you, which was 4 years, we are going to relitigate and rehash every single use of force complaint you've ever had. And we're going to drag you through the mud to the point to where not a single jury in this country will ever find you not guilty. Each case would have carried, or each count would have carried 10 years. So I was looking at like 270 years in prison if I was convicted on all 27 counts.
So what made
Yeah.
the FBI get involved in this case, man? Because there was so much going on in the city at point in time.
I think, in my opinion, now I can never prove this, obviously. My opinion, they were looking for someone to make an example of, and because of my reputation, they had their guy. They're like, we can make a case against this guy. Nobody's going to believe that he didn't do this, and we can save face by charging him, convicting him, and it's going to help quell these riots because they will feel like we're doing something. So a perfect set of circumstances, me being a highly proactive officer with a history of use of force, they could make that case in the court of public opinion and get the conviction before it ever went to trial.
Man. So at this point in time, what was LMPD's command? How were they being towards you during this?
Man, so no one called me, no one contacted me, no one offered me any support. And this is for the FOP too, man. Like nobody was offering me any help. Like, I mean, nobody was giving me a guiding hand. And
you were still employed by them, correct?
Do what? Oh yeah,
I was still employed.
I was employed for almost a year. So I was served. I was on desk duty for almost a year before I was finally even indicted. So, but once I was indicted, they were going to fire me. I caught wind of that and went and resigned. But yeah, man, nobody was giving me any help. Like nobody was helping me through this. Nothing. And the funny thing is there's guys that actually had struck people in the head with flashlights, mag lights, and batons, and had never even been charged. I know one guy in particular got a 29-day suspension and no criminal charges at all. So I was just viewed as a necessary evil, and I was going to be used to make a point. And everybody was on board with that. I'm pretty sure the FOP was on board with it. Pretty sure that the command was on board with it, because Major McClinton at the time, I think he had been promoted to assistant chief of something. I had gotten a gift for him, like a bottle of bourbon. I was going to deliver it with one of my other partners for being such a good leader. And when we delivered it, he wouldn't even shake my hand. Just looked me in the face, was like, thanks, and then kind of shooed me out of his office. It's like, and another lieutenant, when Cotton Jim passed away, I went to his funeral, and a couple of the guys from the 1st Division were there, and I went to shake their hands, and they wouldn't shake my hand. So, I mean, a lot of officers had completely turned their back on me. People that knew me personally turned their back on me. So I just, I felt really lost at the time, man. It was really tough seeing guys that I would have taken a bullet for not even shake my hand.
Why do you think they turned their back on you?
Because I was politically inconvenient, man. Like, even associating with me was grounds to get you investigated. I had one guy was going to write me a letter for my case, and somebody caught wind of it, and command went to him and said, "Do not write him a letter. You will be investigated." And so
Mm.
people were just afraid of losing their jobs, afraid of losing their careers, and I don't blame a lot of the guys for not writing me letters that I asked for letters and stuff. I don't blame a lot of those guys for not doing that because I could see that coming back to haunt them. But turning your back on me at a fellow coworker, because I went to the academy with Cotton Jim. Me and him were pretty close. We'd served in the first division since we got out of the academy. So I was really close to Cotton Jim. We'd served in Beat 3 together. Cotton Jim was one of my first beat partners. And the fact that I went there and I felt like an outcast to a group of dudes that, I'd served with was really tough. Like I said, I would have taken a bullet for any of these guys. As a matter of fact, like a lot of the times when these guys got into a situation where they knew they needed some heavy firepower, they would call me. Like they'd be like, "Hey, we need Cory here because he's got a good tactical mindset. We need Cory here because he knows how to handle these situations. We need Cory because he's good at warrants." And they just, man, it was tough.
See,
It was really
my
hard.
thing is,
with that.
a lot of guys after you were gone were like, "Man, we tried to talk to Cory. We told Cory he needed to calm down. We went to command about Cory and Sergeant Joe, and command didn't do anything about Cory." Man, so when I'm telling you this, what comes to your mind when you're hearing this all these years later, that these guys were like, "Man, we knew Cory was a liability. He was just a loose cannon, and the command did nothing about him. They just let him stay on the street, and he was a danger to the city."
Danger to this. So that is, I think, CYA talk right there. Because people were calling me up and, "Hey, man, we're getting ready to go to this call. Can you come with us?" "Yeah, I'll be there in a minute. Just let me finish this accident or whatever." Command left me on the street even after I'd been indicted for like 3 months because they needed me on the street. I made a huge difference. I know it sounds like I'm being a braggart, but without me, Russell neighborhood was going to fall apart because I was doing that much work on that beat. And within 6 months of being off that beat, the murder rate had skyrocketed because they knew when I was working that, Daddy was home and people were going to behave. Russell neighborhood knew who I was. They knew me. And that was just the way it was. The shitheads knew to keep a low profile when I was on the street. When they saw me riding, the crack dens were shutting down. The heroin dealers got off the corners. Nobody played because they knew I was serious. They knew I was capable and competent to do the job. And that's the reason why command kept me on beat 2 for so long. If I wasn't good at what I did, they would have gotten rid of me out of the first division a long time ago.
That's a good point, man. Good point. So all this transpired, and you're sitting here in federal court facing these charges, looking at going away for 100 and something years on the federal level, man.
Yeah.
What's your mindset as you're going through this? Because you've been abandoned by the thin blue line, the people that you were supposed to be your brothers, your command.
Yeah.
And then not just that, you got politicians against you. You've got the media against you. The entire country is against you and watching you on TV saying this giant white cop beat up this poor protester and smashed him with a stick. What's your mindset during that time period?
Man, I got really, I am very, I've never been one to cower or hide away or shy away from things. I don't, I don't hold myself back when I'm speaking. And it's just because I'm not afraid of what I say and what I do. Everything I do is right. Everything I do is, and I'm not saying I'm a perfect person, but when it comes to, you know, policing, I very rarely made wrong decisions. I tried really, really hard to paint within the lines. It just so happens that you can paint within the lines and still come out looking like you did the wrong thing. It happens all the
Police
time.
work,
It
brother.
happens. Yeah, and I don't care how good of a job you do. Because I got a ton of convictions, man. I got a ton of convictions. I did a really good job on all my stuff. But if you use force and a half-baked video gets out there, it can ruin your reputation. And officers know this, but it's just so ingrained into their mindsets. Oh, he got a lot of use of force. He's up to no good. He's doing the wrong thing. But to listen to some of these guys that say that I was abusive and all this right here, You heard them brag, man, like they broke a dude's fingers one time in like a pig pile, or they, broke a dude's nose, or they hit a guy with the flashlight. It's like, you know what I never did? I never hit a guy with a flashlight. You know what I never did? Had a single digit break somebody's fingers or punch somebody while their face is on the ground. I never did any of that. Everything I did was controlled. I never hurt anybody. I never broke anybody's bones. I never put anybody in the hospital for any length of time. I mean, I had a lot of like ER visits, but like not because I was trying to hurt them. Anytime I used force, it was always controlled because I was competent in my abilities. A lot of these officers that get out there, they get scared and they hurt people because they're not controlled. Um, and those guys will brag about that silly stuff and then look at me whenever, I tee off on somebody and put a 3-piece combo on their head and they're like, oh my God, that was terrible. Well, why is that terrible? But when you're rolling around on the ground with like 6 dudes and you look totally incompetent, it looks far more excessive. But
Yeah.
you are right and I am wrong, just because I'm capable of handling all my business myself, and I don't have to call for 4-car backup to handle a drunk, But I like I'll put somebody on the ground, I'll go knee on belly, and I'll throw them in a hobble and handcuffs by myself. And I'm not saying that there to brag. I'm saying that there because me being able to do that by myself gave everybody the perception that I was like this like loose cannon because I was capable of doing these things on my own. And
So,
a lot of it's just
man, so what would like if you had to use one word to describe your feelings at this time as you're facing prison time? What's one word you could use to describe how you were feeling?
I was defiant, man. I was not. I was just like, put me in prison, see what
This is a good
happens.
word.
Like I do not. Like I said, I don't care away from anything. I mean, I went into prison with my head held high. Everybody knew I was a cop. I did not fear anybody in there. And I think that's the reason why I got along with so many dudes in there. My roommate was a Latin King, or my cellmate. He was a Latin King, and he was from Chicago. He was in for a double homicide. Me and him got along great.
But I'll be honest, man, I was worried about you because I felt like you were doubling down on everything. Cause like most people, like when they get in trouble and they're facing time, bro, they get rid of social media. Every aspect is gone, yo. And I was like, yo, what? And Cory, like you
Yeah,
was still on
I will.
social media. He's still posting. I
Yep.
remember you posted the evil Goofy. I wish I had the picture of it still. There was a
Yeah.
Facebook post you made. It was like the evil Goofy. And then next to
Yeah.
it said 2020 riots, I would do it again. And in my mind,
Yeah.
I'm like, Cory, no. Like, no.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing, bro? What are you doing? And then there was an incident that popped off between you and a couple officers on social media, and it started
This was
making
after I
rounds.
had been. Yeah, this is after I had been banned. Like I had been banned, and people were still feeding me information from this Facebook group, and they were talking mad shit about me, dude. Just like crazy stuff. Like, and so I messaged them directly. I was like, "Hey, man, if you don't keep my name out of your mouth, I'm gonna find you." I was
Oh,
like,
I
"I'll
remember
give
the
you a reason."
comment. He said, "I
Yeah,
was like,
I
I'll
will.
see. I'm gonna see your bitch ass when I get out, motherfucker." I was like, "Oh."
Yeah,
What was
because
the
I don't
what was
remember
the
the guy's name.
response?
Oh, nothing.
Oh,
They
I remember
didn't
the
say a
guys'
word.
names. It was I
Huh?
remember the names, bro. I remember the names, yo. And I was just like, because I was like me. I tell people it ain't my drama, it ain't my problem. But I
Yeah.
just sit and I do a lot of sitting and listening and watching
Mm-hmm.
how people respond. And there's people that were sticking up for you, and there's people like, man, fuck F that dude, he's gone. We don't need him, yo. So,
Yeah.
and I was like, my concern was I was just your mental at that point in time, because I'm like, there's no way this guy's this defiant against the feds, man. But I'm kind of glad you were, because we need people like that now that are like,
Yeah.
I don't care if you're the feds, man. So what?
Yeah,
do
and
what you're gonna do.
I still make fun of the feds. Like I made a pipe the other day, so I do a lot of wood carving now. So I made a pipe the other day, and underneath it I said, "For tobacco use only for the feds that monitor my account." Because I mean, like, they're going to look for a reason to pop me again. I know they are. The feds actually called me a couple of weeks ago and told me to quit making threats online, and I was like, "What threats are you talking about?" And they said that, "Oh, in 2024 you're coming off the bench," and they took that as a threat.
Oh wow, dude. man.
Yeah,
So
they took
so that's crazy, man. Yeah,
yeah,
just
man. They
yeah.
called me up like, "Hey, you need to stop making threats." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And they're like, "You said in 2024 you're coming off the bench," and I was like, "Well, maybe I am." Yeah.
I'm playing basketball now. I'm just saying. Like, what are you, I'm assuming a lot. Just saying. But man, so you get sentenced, man, and you got a wife and kids, bro. Like,
Yeah.
and in your mind, you served your country as a soldier. I mean, you've been a cop for all these years, yo. You don't have a record, real any sort of like criminal record, and all of
No,
a sudden you're
zero.
going to prison. What's that?
Yeah. So I'd never had I think the most I'd ever been charged with is a speeding ticket. I'd never been in handcuffs outside of the academy, obviously. Even after I got to prison, I didn't get in handcuffs until they put me in segregation for the first time.
So you walk into where were so how many you got what 4 years correct to serve?
No, I got
What was
2 years and 2 years. I got 2 years in, and I got 2 years probation. I'm on probation right now, but 4 years total. So if I screw up, I'll go back for another 2 years. But I don't have to worry about that. Unless something wild happens.
So what
But
what's your wife's thinking when she hears and your kids like daddy's going to prison for 2 years and daddy's been a hero this
so
whole time and all of a sudden
yeah.
daddy's the bad guy.
Yeah, so the kids still don't really understand the whole circumstances behind me going down, but we talked to them about it and we explained it that Daddy did something and I have to go to timeout. We have to go to adult timeout. So that's the way we explained it to the kids. My wife, man, I got really blessed finding the woman that I found, man, because she stuck beside me. She's been by my side the entire time. We're financially struggling now.
Man, I hate to hear that.
It is what it is, man. Like, I'm not one to complain. I still do everything I can. That's one of the things that really bothers me about people. It's like, oh, I got a felony, I can't do anything. Dude, I carve things. I make spoons. I make wood things. I make, I just carve stuff and sell it on Facebook Marketplace. Man, there's always ways to make money. So even though we're not doing as well as we were when I was a cop, we're still not doing bad. We're still living the same lifestyle we were. Just things are tighter now. So I'm not. When I
So
say
how
we're
long
broke, we're not broke.
when you went in, how long you were still in the military when you got sentenced too, correct?
Yeah, the military booted me out, and that's another thing, man. I got screwed by the military too because they said they were going to give me a general discharge under honorable conditions, and then like 6 months when I was down, I got a letter from the DOD stating that I had been OTH'd. They other
Other
than
than honorable.
yeah, so they took all my benefits away from me and everything.
How many years were you in
Luckily,
at that point?
18 years, man.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
man.
just like 6 months shy of being able to retire. But I tried to talk them into like throwing me an IRR for a few months so I could get my retirement. They wouldn't do it, but
It's
they
bad
really,
politics for him, wasn't it?
yeah, yep. And that's the exact
Politics
thing
ruin
that
everything, man.
my JAG officer that I was working for, because I was at part of the JAG court this time because I transitioned to become a paralegal. I told him everything, and he's like, "Look, man," he's like, "the tag wants you OTH to try to save face for the National Guard, so that's the reason why they OTH'd me." Because I had called him from the jail phones and was like, "Hey, man, what the hell? You all said you were going to give me another or a general under honorable conditions, and you all OTH'd me." He's like, "Well, the tag would not let us do anything other than that because he wanted to save face for the West Virginia National Guard." So that's the
Wow.
reason. Yeah, it was all politics, man. Everything bad that happened to me was politics related between 2020 and 2023. So once I heard of that, man, I immediately, called up some people and started making plans to appeal that. So it's already been appealed, and I'm back to good with my benefits and everything. I got all that back. I'm back to general
Oh,
under
for the
honorable.
military?
Yeah, that was a
Oh,
pretty quick process.
so you'll be able
Yeah.
to get your retirement?
No, not my retirement. That's
No,
gone
just
forever.
okay.
Yeah, but
Okay.
my VA
It's the
benefits.
VA. Okay.
Yeah, got all that back. So it was a little bit of a battle, but it wasn't that big of a deal. Just a lot of bureaucratic paperwork. Got that covered, man. But yeah,
Wow.
dude, the military was playing the same politics game, dude. Like, hey, media has portrayed this guy as an evil person. We're going to separate ourselves from him and be like, hey, look what we did. We cut ourselves off from him. so we don't have to deal with that anymore. It was whatever they could do.
Everything
They
is
could
about perception, man. It's
Yep.
all about, don't matter what the truth is, perception
Yep.
is reality in this thing of
Yep.
life, brother. So you walk into prison, what's it like, bro? Like, because we all hear the stories of, if you're a cop
Yeah.
going to prison, you're gonna die, they're gonna kill you, and man,
Dude,
like,
that's the way I had it in my mind. The guys that took me to, like, when I got to prison, the guys that were walking me into the back to get all my medical stuff, because you have to go through this whole screening process. They were like, "Hey man, you got to stay away from the white guys, the Aryan Brotherhood. They're going to stab you up and all this." And I was like, "Oh Jesus Christ!" I was like, "Here we go." And they're like, "We can put you in administrative segregation for your sentence." And I was like, "No, I'm not doing that. That ain't me." So I opted to hit the yard. I was out for maybe 3 days. I had this, like, they gave me this little backstory as like a plan, but dude, their cell phones in prison. Like, everybody has a cell phone in prison. They get smuggled in constantly. So somebody
through the
Googled me.
ass.
Yep. Somebody
Through the
Googled
ass.
me, and the next thing I know, everybody knows who I am. And they're like,
Say,
"You're the police."
phone smell funny.
Yeah. What's this phone stick for? You got bad breath. But yeah, man, they all knew who I was within days, and then I just owned it. Like, I tried to hide it for a minute, and then, like, when everybody found out, I was like, "Yeah, I'm the police." I was like, "What are you gonna do about it?" And they're like, "What do you mean? What are we gonna do about it?" I was like, "Well, I mean, there's two options. You can deal with it or get, where we can fight about it. But, just so you know, I will fight every single person in here." And
Did they know you were a trained fighter?
I don't think so. I think that came out later on, but just the fact that I was, like, willing to throw down, they kind of accepted me as one of their own, man. It was really weird. It was a really weird dynamic.
And when you say they, you don't mean the Aryan Brotherhood, right? You ain't got no.
Yeah, I don't mean the Aryan Brotherhood. Yeah, I don't mean the white
prison
dudes.
Black Panthers.
Yeah. So, like, my roommate was a Latin king, my one cellmate, and me and him got along really good, dude. We had a lot of funny conversations because he's like, "Man, he's like, the fact that you're a cop makes me hate you, but you're all right." He legitimately would tell me, he's like, he even wrote, it was funny because when the New York Times did that piece on me, he wrote a letter on my behalf to the New York Times stating, "I hate cops, but I still like Cory."
Damn.
It's weird, man. Like, I met another guy who's a drug dealer from St. Louis, young black kid. Me and him worked out every day together, dude. Like, I got him into CrossFit. He's out there doing body weight CrossFit stuff. Dude couldn't do like 5 pull-ups. I got him, like, by the end of his sentence, because he had less time than me. By the end of his sentence, he was doing, like, muscle ups. So I, like, trained with him. Yeah, it was weird, man, because I'm still in contact with a couple of these guys. I only got one fight in prison, and it was from, like, this, like, young Hispanic guy that was, like, trying to front for MS-13, and it did not work out well for him. But, like, it was, like, during the Super Bowl, he was, like, lit up on, like, hooch and was like, "Are you the police, man?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm the police, man." He's like, "You hate brown people?" I was like, "No, I don't hate brown people." He's like, "You kill brown people?" And I was like, "If I have to." And he
I just don't want them celebrating I don't want them celebrating their National Independence Day in my country.
Yeah. But so me and him got into it. He was like, so I was sitting down and he was standing up, and he went to throw this big haymaker punch, and I stood up and I put him in what's called a standing head and arm lever, and I choked him unconscious. And when I choked him unconscious, his other two buddies were, like, looking at me, so I dropped him. And when I dropped him, he kind of, like, crumpled to the ground. And as soon as he crumpled to the ground, I took off running. I ran back to my cell and got under my blanket and acted like I was asleep. So when the COs come running to see about the fight, they always check everybody's hands. Yeah, they always check everybody's hands. So they're checking everybody's hands, and they're like, "You know what happened?" I was like, "I was asleep, man. I don't know what happened." So they couldn't figure anything out. As weird as this may sound, there's not a single camera in prison. Like, there's none.
Or not a
like,
snitch.
Yeah. So this dude couldn't say he got choked out by the police in prison. So he just ate it. And the next day I saw him, and I was like, "Hey, man, are you all right?" He's like, "We're good, dude." And, like, that was it. Like,
Now,
they never came after me again and nothing.
You said you did get put in solitary at one point, correct?
Yeah. So I got put in solitary when I got transferred to maximum security. So I was originally in a medium security prison, and then they transferred me from there to a maximum security for some kind of security concern. They would never tell me what that security concern was. So they transferred me to Terre Haute Max, and I'm there, and then they just put me in solitary confinement. I'm in there for about a month or a month and a couple days or something like that. And they're using the COVID as an excuse. And I'm like, there's no COVID. Nobody else is in seg because of this. So I'm like, all right, well, can I get a book? And they're like, yeah, we'll get you a book. And then like a day goes by and I still don't got a book. And they're like, I was like, hey man, can I get a book? And then like another day goes by and I don't get a book. So it's like a week later, I'm still begging the CO for a book. I'm like, hey man, give me a book. I don't have anything to do in here. And finally he gives me a book and it's in Spanish.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He knew what he was doing. But yeah, that was probably the only CO that I ran across that, like, if I would have got a hold of him, I would have like legitimately beat him up. Like, because when you're in there completely by yourself with nothing but your thoughts, man, that is a miserable, miserable place to be. I think
What
a seg
thoughts were
cell
you
is like
having in there by yourself, man?
8 foot wide by like 12 foot long, and I had like my only window was like viewing another brick wall. So like if I looked up at like a 90-degree angle, I could see a sliver of the sky for like a few hours a day. But dude, I there was nothing to do in there. You can only do so many push-ups and sit-ups in a day to keep yourself occupied. So I mean, you're just laying there on a concrete bed with nothing to do but think. And dude, like, it is just miserable. Oh man, it was.
Man, what kind of thoughts were you having in there by yourself, man? Like regret?
And mostly it was just like missing my family. I remember specifically thinking about like, what is my wife and kids doing right now? I wonder if they miss me. I don't have regrets. I will never regret what I did as a police officer or what I did as a soldier. It's just, you're never going to get me to say I did the wrong thing. But really,
So I'll
what
say,
was
so
that?
the whole reason, like I said, the whole reason we have you here on this podcast is because during this point in time, while you were serving your time in prison, you started writing your life story to put out your story for the masses to hear, which is why I
Right.
have you here, because you were able, while you were in prison, if you all look at the screen, I'm gonna pull up, do the screen share real quick. We have your book that you purchased, or that's not purchased, your book that you wrote, Tragedy in America by Cory Evans, man. How did this book come to light while you were in prison?
So when I was in prison, there's not a lot to do. I didn't gamble, I didn't drink, I didn't do any of the silly stuff to get over on the COs. So I spent a lot of time writing a book. And there's a system called True Links where you can email your family instead of writing letters. It's like, I think it's like 5 cents a minute to write, and then on top of being so much a minute to write, you can only write like 3,500 characters in an email. And I just started writing my thoughts out, man, starting when I was a kid, just kind of reminiscing through my whole life and writing it. And I emailed it all to my mom. I was like, hey, mom, I was like, I want to email you all these emails. I'm just going to kind of write and vent and talk and just kind of like self-therapy. And I did that for 18 months. And by the end of it, it was a pretty lengthy book. And my mom was like, I'm going to mail this out. And then Defiance Publishing, they're a conservative book publisher. They picked it up and compiled it and edited it and printed it for me, man. It was a blessing to have somebody that was willing to publish my story, because I thought that by the end of me writing this, the only person that was ever going to read it was be me and my mom. There's a few stories in that book that my mom had never heard before, and my mom, when I called her, she was crying and she was like, I can't believe this happened. And I was like, I was going through a lot of hard moments, Mom. It's like, I might be a tough son of a bitch, but I'm still human.
Yeah.
So there's
Absolutely,
some
man.
things in there. There's I talked about a suicide attempt that I had. And a lot of people are like, oh, I thought you were defiant, I thought you were so tough. And it's like, I was going to commit suicide because in my mindset, it was the only way for me to financially ever be able to take care of my family, because I had the SGLI bill, which was $400,000,
400.
life insurance,
Yeah.
police department, and so I had about $1 million of life insurance coverage at the time. And my plan is I was going to be leaving drill so that I would get my money. I was going to leave drill and drive my car into a bridge abutment like I was going to fake texting and drive my car into a bridge abutment and kill myself. That way my family could get those life insurance checks and be taken care of. That was the thought
Wow.
process I had, because in my mind, I'm like, I'm never going to be able to carry a gun again. I'm never going to be able to fight again. I'm never going to be able to be a warrior again, because all these aspects of my life that I've trained my entire life to be are going to be taken from me, and I won't have a means to provide for my family anymore. So my idea was commit suicide, make it look like an accident, and get my family paid. And
Man,
and a lot
that's
of
deep,
people, and
brother.
it's probably that's probably one of the most weird reasons to commit suicide. I was so concerned about my family, I was going to kill myself to make sure that they were taken care of. But if you know Christina Bevan, she
Oh
saved my
yeah.
life. Like, legitimately, she saved my life, man, because she called me at the time that I was going to be doing that. And she was able, I don't even think she knew she was talking to a suicidal person, but she was saying, like, oh, you and your family are so good. You're going to be taken care of. You're going to bounce back from this. And I remember explicitly driving by a bridge abutment, the very bridge abutment that I planned on killing myself on. I drove past that at 120 miles an hour with her on the phone with me. And if it was not for her calling me at that point in time, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Well, I'm glad you didn't do it, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing
No,
is,
me
you know
too.
what? Yeah, but you're not the only person I've heard that has those same feelings and has had the same thoughts. I know a lot of soldiers that have had the same. My family's better off without me, bro. So just trust me, you're not alone in that aspect
Yeah.
at all, man. But I mean, like I said, I haven't got the chance to read it yet, but I definitely plan on it. And I know I'm gonna get my copy from you. We do the. I tell everybody,
Yeah.
anybody that writes a book, we do a signed copy, signed exchange, But man, to be able to write a book, man, is a monumentous. It's a big thing, and for you to be able to find a publisher and get it published is even bigger, because I tell people it is so hard, one, to write the book, period, because you have all these thoughts in your head and you don't know how to formulate these thoughts into a story that people are going to want to read. And you were able to somehow do that on your own without any guidance inside the jail.
Well, like I said, I started at the beginning and I just wrote my thoughts, man. The book is written the way I think and the way I speak. So a lot of people might struggle to read it. I don't know. I haven't even read my own book, but it's literally just my thoughts. Like the way we're talking right now is how I wrote the book. I just kind of wrote as I thought, and it just flowed out of me, man. Just because there's no one to listen to you in prison. Like, these other inmates are all dealing with their own personal problems, and a lot of them have a lot worse off than I do growing up. A lot of these guys have really broken homes. um, so I didn't want to burden any of the guys that I'd met in prison with my story. I wanted to try to keep my tough guy mentality up in there, because I didn't want to be viewed as weak. um, so I just wrote and emailed it to my mom, man. And my mom was a big reason why I made it through prison, because I didn't want to burden my wife either. She's dealing with or she's dealing with the kids and school, and she's doing so much that I try to just keep up appearances for her, be strong for her, keep her, going. So my mom was really who I leaned on while I was down. You know, she's the one that really talked me through a lot of the stuff. Because anytime I've met with my wife, I'd always tell her the little funny stories that happened, or some guy got beat up, and I'd tell her about that. And I always try to keep things light with her, but with my mom, man, she was the one I really leaned on hard. Just because I knew my mom could handle it, and uh, and I didn't want to burden my wife more so, because she had so much she was dealing with.
Man. So you do what, 18 months, right? And then you
Yeah, I
get
think it was eight,
released.
8 out. Yeah,
And so
yeah. It was.
when you get released, what's that like when you've been locked down? Like, say you've been free your entire life, and all of a sudden you're behind bars for 18 months, and now you're free again. What's your plan
Yeah.
going forward?
So I hit the ground running, like I'd never missed a beat, man. I went right back into job searching. I went right back into trying to find a career. I'm a certified HVAC technician now. Certified in
Oh, man.
plumbing. I had an carpentry apprenticeship while I was in prison. But I did all these things preparing myself to not be able to do the things that I used to do. So I just kind of had a plan that I was going to get into the trades and start working, and I really hit the ground running, man. I didn't even slow down. It took a minute to get reacquainted with comfortable life because prison's pretty uncomfortable. Uh, but like my kids, it's like I never missed a beat with them. Meshed right back together. Me and my wife meshed back together. And honestly, I think military life had prepped me for that because being gone several times in the military on deployments, coming right back into civilian life, similar concepts. I mean, obviously not the same, but being gone and coming back to that same very rigid, structured environment of prison, the same very rigid, structured environment of a deployment, it all, I was able to just walk right back into life without missing a beat. Uh,
Yeah.
Coming home wasn't as much of a challenge as I thought it was going to be. Finding good work has been a challenge. Man, I can't tell you how many resumes I've had out. I probably put my resume into 200 places, 300 places, something ridiculous like that. And the initial phone interviews go great. I go in for like the in-person interviews, and then the Google search happens. And when the Google search happens, is usually when I either get ghosted or I get the "we've moved in a different direction," email. So it's been really hard to find like good, well-paying employment. I've had a couple of jobs here and there that were like low paying or kind of temporary. I was a paralegal for a little bit. I did bankruptcy paralegal
I
work.
remember that. Yeah. Yeah. Because I remember I
Yeah,
met you downtown
yeah,
at your little
and
office, man.
yeah, that was it was a good job. I love the dude that I worked for. Me and him are still buddies. But it just wasn't going to pay the bills, man. It just the pay was low on it, and it wasn't because he was a cheapskate. It's just that kind of work doesn't pay that well. Um, so I left that there and got into a maintenance position at a mobile home park and got really good at the mobile home stuff, where I was able to build, you know, recondition mobile homes and refurb them and stuff. And then I recently left that to take a job at another company. Obviously, I'm not going to drop their name because I don't want people harassing them, but I got a
Yeah.
job working at a company, fixing trucks and, big rig trucks and stuff like that. So, uh, yeah, man. So it's been a long haul finding another career path that paid as well as being a cop. I know a lot of cops say they don't get paid well, but
Yeah.
I
No, that's the most overblown thing. I mean, could we
yeah,
use more money? Of course, but depends on where you're at. If you're from out
yeah,
in Eastern Kentucky, where you're from, you making pennies out there, bro. You ain't scraping,
yeah,
but
yeah,
you in the big city, life's
yeah,
good.
yeah. I think when I was on LMPD with overtime and any off duty that I worked, I think I was clearing like 70,000 a year. So it's not bad. I would always never say no to a raise, but I mean, I wasn't struggling as a police officer. And now that I'm making like $22 an hour, rehanging sewer lines, I realized how good policing I really had it, because as a police
Oh
officer,
yeah.
you got a lot of dudes that are like, "Oh, I'm a police officer. I'm this and that." It's like, but you really don't do anything. You hang out at Thornton's, you drink your soda pop, you eat your donut. It's like you ain't working, bro. Come on now. But
Yes,
you
absolutely.
know,
No
there's
lies
dudes out
detected, my
there that
man.
there's a lot of dudes out there that don't earn the paycheck. That's for sure.
I tell
But
people all the
there's
time, man. I was like, I tell people I couldn't do your job. I'm like, if only you knew the truth.
yeah,
Like there's way
yeah.
worse ways to make money. Trust me.
Yeah, yeah. Being a cop, man, it's like, and I love being a cop, dude. It was like a hobby for me. It wasn't just a job. It was like a hobby. I love being a cop, dude. But at the same time, looking back, I should have been that guy. I should have been that slug, because I would still be a cop if I was
Nah,
lazy.
bro.
Uh,
That ain't who you are, man. That ain't
yeah,
who
well,
you are, dude. Nah, that ain't who you are. Nah. I couldn't see you as a slug, my dude. Not the
yeah,
least bit.
yeah,
So so we're gonna get ready to close the show. I got 3 questions I kind of want to ask you. So
sure.
after all this, has your viewing of policing and service changed after all this you've endured?
No, man, I'm still a huge supporter of the blue. I understand why a lot of guys turn their back on me. I understand the knee jerk reactions. I even understand why a lot of guys turn their back on me, just because of the political environment. Being a cop is like being in politics, man. because all it takes is one thing that you say, and your career can be over with. So I understand why a lot of guys did it. Now, I am much more uh, discerning when I offer my support to police officers. You know, I'm not going to support every cop the same. I'm very discerning.
Yeah.
So if you're that guy that's up there busting your ass, taking down dope, taking down guns, doing the right thing, then I'm like, I got your back, brother. But if you're the dude that's like there for his paycheck and is going home, I got nothing for you, because you're doing everything that I'm against as a police officer. To me, every police officer should have been just like me. We should have all been out there busting our ass, because I guarantee you, if everybody worked as hard as I did, then Louisville would be the safest city in the country. But I remember it was a stat that I think George Rodman said this a long time ago. There's like 1% of police officers do 90% of the work.
Oh
You
yeah.
know,
I'll
and that's
push back on
true.
that a little bit, only on one part, because I feel like you have different. It's like a puzzle, like a car. You got
Mhm.
guys that are the wheels. You got guys that are the steering wheel, that are the seats. Everything kind of comes together. You need all those different personalities to kind of work together. You need the guy that can talk. You need the guy that can be able to bust ass. But at the same
Yeah.
time, even if we were all working like that, the problem is it's not us, because we do the job, but the systems we have in this country, the political or the court system, has failed this country and has failed the citizens over and over again. So
Oh yeah.
regardless of how much dope we're catching, man, it's kind of like, what's it all for if we're doing it, but the courts aren't? There's no punishments to be had.
Yeah.
It's kind of all for
So,
nothing,
so
unfortunately.
funny story.
And
LMPD just recently posted a photo of a guy that they arrested for homicide. Not even like 6 months ago, I got a call after I got out of prison that they were going to drop the criminal case against this guy because he fled to Mississippi, came back, and they dropped the charges against me because I was in prison, right? So they dropped his charges. They dropped his charges. 6 months later, he's posted wanted for a homicide. So because they let this guy go because of my case, he ends up committing a murder. So if they would have done their
mm,
jobs and put this guy in prison like they should have, there would be someone else would have their life still. As an example of that. And Jamarcus Glover, same thing. I arrested
oh yeah,
Jamarcus Glover. Yeah, I arrested him like 6 times, dude. I nailed this guy to the wall like 6 times, like perfect cases, and they kept letting him go. Like they give him drug treatment. You can't give a drug dealer drug treatment. All you're doing is giving him a clientele base. Um, so it was so weird to me that the fact that he is out and got busted again, dude, got caught
again,
again.
and they gave him bail again, bro. I'm like, y'all are the stupidest people I've ever met. And so that kind of
And
leads me to my second question. Have you lost faith in America and the systems we have in place here in this country?
not the systems. The systems work. It's the people operating the systems that are failing us. It's not the systems itself. America's still the greatest country on earth. We still have the best governing system on the planet. The problem is we have elected a group of eunuchs to lead us. That is the problem. I have no faith in the people and the leadership. I have no faith in the leadership of Louisville, no faith in the leadership of LMPD, no faith in the leadership of the federal government. To me, it all needs to be ripped out by the root and replaced.
I
You
agree.
just need strong people to lead, man, and we're electing people that make us feel good, not people to do the job.
Mm. Yeah, people that were never meant to be leaders, people that couldn't even get a job outside of
Correct.
politics, man. So my
Exactly.
last question to you is, what's your hope for the country? What's your hope for America going forward at this current time we're in, man?
Man, my hope is the next generation is coming up. My youngest sister and my boys, this generation, I'm hoping that they can be led down the right path to fix the mistakes that my generation and the generation before have created. We've created so many problems for ourselves and for the future generations, and I'm really hoping that some corrections can be made and that they can really pull us up by the bootstraps and get us going again. Just like the Great Depression guys, what do they call them? The silent generation. The guys that fought World War I, fought World War II, and dealt with the Great Depression. That's kind of the same situation we're in now, man. And that generation saved the world. I'm hoping that this next generation can do it because we have screwed it up. So I'm going to raise my boys the best I can, and I'm going to coach and teach all these guys that I'm training to fight the best I can, and I'm hoping that I can give them the same mentality, the same mindset that I have, and maybe we can pull ourselves out of this this chaotic struggle that we're in right now. Because I just don't see things getting better unless we really change our mindset and our culture as a whole.
Absolutely, brother. Man, so we're gonna get ready to end this thing, bro. This has been phenomenal. This has probably been the best interview I've done in the entirety of my podcasting time, bro. So, man, before we go, if people want a copy of your book, where can they go to get a copy of your book, and where can they find you at on social media?
So you can find me on Facebook at Cory Evans. That's really my only social media. I got banned on Instagram again. TikTok, I got banned.
Commie Graham, man. Commie Graham, dude. Uh-oh. We lost you, brother. I think his phone just died. Oh, there it is.
Oh, yeah, my wife called me. She for some reason bumped me out of there. But yeah, so Facebook, Cory Evans is my Facebook. It's the only social media I have. And the Tragedy in America can be found on Amazon and Barnes and Noble are the two places. And Defiance Publishing is the publisher. So if you want to hit their website up and check out their other books, they got a lot of really great books to go through.
So, ladies and gentlemen, there it is. It's going on almost 2 hours, man. This has been a phenomenal interview. Cory, I'm gonna move you to the green room and I'm gonna holler back at you in a second. All right, so hold out for me. All right, brother.
Sure thing.
Oh man. Whew. Man, what a banger of an episode. What an interview, man. Dude, I'm just sitting here like, wow, man, this brother's been through the ringer. And like I said, it's one thing to have worked with somebody and know them on a certain level, but this interview just kind of took it to a whole nother level for me with knowing Cory. And you just don't know everything. You don't know the entire story. Most of the time, this only story we're getting is what the media tells us in a quick blurb of a headline, but the truth is there's so much below that headline that we don't know. And we have to take everything we hear in the media and on the news and on social media with a grain of salt, because people have agendas that they are trying to fulfill. Everybody's got an agenda. Everybody's got an agenda, whether it's good or bad, but the only thing that the agenda should be after is the truth. And so now we have Cory's side of the story. And I hope that you all tune in and share this podcast, put it out there, because Cory's only one guy that has come, as he calls himself, a political prisoner. There have been many officers across this country who went to go work a shift doing their job, and the next thing you know, they're facing life in prison and their entire career is ruined because everything in this country now falls on politics and the perspective of those looking. And it might not be real, but that's because the media is so down and dirty with this, and they're all for pushing their little agendas to us, man. And I gotta tell people, turning us against each other. Like I said, they tried to say that Cory was racist, and I'm like, I know racist people. Cory ain't racist. It's crazy. That's why I tell people you have to unplug from social media and the news. And you have to actually go sit down and talk with people, get to know people. Don't just read the headline and assume from the headline. And can trust me, I'm guilty of that too. I read headlines and I hear rumors sometime and I automatically might jump to conclusions, but I have to remind myself that, you know what, maybe I should go talk to this person. So if you're still out there and you're listening and you still have an opinion about the former officer Cory Evans, you still think he's a scumbag, or you think he's this guy that just like to beat up on people, go get the book Tragedy in America and read his story from his perspective yourself, because it's good to have a different perspective, because our perspective is not the only perspective that we have in this life. Man, life is multidimensional, man. I mean, there's so many different ways to see things. And maybe the way we're seeing things isn't right and isn't correct. So do my man a favor, go follow him on Facebook. I'm talking about about getting back on Instagram to promote that book, because that's like literally that's the best way to do it, man. But definitely share this podcast, please. Share away. All right. So, man, I'm gonna go ahead getting ready to close this up, man. Thank you all for tuning into the I Am Pits podcast, man. This has been, like I said, a banger, absolute banger, going on 2 hours, man. So tell your mom, tell your daddy, tell your friends, tell everybody about the podcast. Be sure to leave me a review if you can, 5 stars. Holla at your boy. Like I said, we're back in the saddle for 2024, and I got a bunch more interviews coming up and a bunch more shows, man. So thank you all for tuning in. Hey, I love and appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. The reason I keep doing this show is because of you all, and I appreciate you all, and I don't want you to think that I take you for granted at all. Ladies and gentlemen, I love y'all, and I will see y'all on the next one.